The knock came at 3:17 in the morning. Not a polite tap. Not even a normal knock. This was fists slamming against solid oak hard enough to shake the hinges. And that sound, that violent, desperate banging in the dead of night, that was the moment everything changed. You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue, please subscribe and hit that like button if you've ever been the one in your family who had to clean up everyone else's chaos. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. My name is Diana Marshall. I'm 31 years old now. But 10 years ago, when I was just 21, barely scraping by as a freelance software developer in a cramped studio apartment in Portland, my older sister Vanessa left her newborn son on my doorstep in the middle of a freezing March night and disappeared without a trace. My parents, Richard and Gloria Marshall, looked me dead in the eye and said, "He's your burden now. Deal with it." So I did. I raised that baby boy. I loved him like he was mine. I named him Ethan. I built an entire life around him, sacrificing my 20s, my social life, my dreams, everything. Last month, they all came crawling back. Vanessa, her new wealthy husband Marcus, and my parents. They weren't coming to apologize. They weren't coming to check on Ethan. They were coming with lawyers. They filed a custody lawsuit to take my son away from me. But here's the twist they didn't see coming. 2 weeks before they showed up, Ethan's biological father, a tech billionaire named Julian Cross, who died in a helicopter crash, left Ethan a $600 million inheritance in a trust. Suddenly, after a decade of radio silence, they all wanted to be family again. They thought they were coming for a payday. What they didn't know is that I've been documenting everything for 10 years. Every text message, every voicemail, every receipt, every moment of their neglect and cruelty. And I was about to use it all to destroy them in court. Let me take you back to where it all started. March 15th, 2015, 3:17 a.m. I was hunched over my laptop in my tiny 400-square-foot studio, debugging code for a client's e-commerce platform. The deadline was in 6 hours, and I was running on my fourth energy drink and pure anxiety. The apartment smelled like stale coffee and the cheap ramen I'd been living on for weeks. I was a junior developer trying to make it as a freelancer after dropping out of college when my student loans became unbearable. Money was tight. I mean really tight. I was charging $40 an hour and still barely making rent. The radiator in my building was broken, and I was wearing 2 hoodies and fingerless gloves just to type. Then came that sound. Bang. 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 Not the hollow sound of knuckles on wood. This was someone using the side of their fist, hitting my door like they were trying to break through it. My heart stopped. Nobody came to my apartment at 3 in the morning. Ever. I lived alone on the second floor of a converted warehouse building in a neighborhood that was trying to gentrify but hadn't quite made it yet. The banging came again. Harder this time. More frantic. Bang. 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 My blood went cold. That icy shock that starts in your chest and shoots down to your fingertips. I slid my chair back, my socks silent on the worn hardwood floor. My mind was racing through every terrible possibility. Was it a break-in? Had someone followed me home from the grocery store last night? Was it the landlord? No, he wouldn't come at this hour. Then my stomach dropped as I realized the most likely and somehow most dreaded option. Vanessa, my sister. It was exactly her style. Chaos at the worst possible moment. But the last I'd heard, she was somewhere in Arizona with her boyfriend of the month. She wouldn't just show up here. Would she? The banging stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the noise. I stood frozen in the middle of my tiny living space, which was also my bedroom and my office, just listening. The only sound was my own pulse pounding in my ears. I crept toward the door. I grabbed the only heavy thing I owned, a cast iron skillet I'd gotten at a thrift store. It felt pathetic in my hand. What was I going to do, fry an intruder? I stood there with my ear pressed against the wood, my heart hammering against my ribs. Nothing. Not a sound from the hallway. I was convinced I'd imagined it. That the exhaustion and caffeine were making me hallucinate. I was about to turn away when I looked through the peephole. The fisheye lens showed the dimly lit hallway. Empty. Just the flickering fluorescent light and the faded beige walls. But then I saw them. Wet footprints. Not just a few. A chaotic overlapping mess of them right in front of my door. Someone had been there. Standing there. Pounding on my door in the middle of the night. And now they were gone. Adrenaline flooded through me again. I backed away from the door slowly, my knuckles white around the skillet handle. I stared at my 3 deadbolts. They suddenly seemed useless. I stood there for what felt like an hour but was probably only 2 minutes, just frozen, trying to decide what to do. Call the police? And tell them what? That someone knocked on my door? Then I heard it. A sound so faint I almost missed it. A tiny high-pitched sound. Not from the hallway. From right outside my door. a sound that made my blood run even colder. It was a baby crying. No. No, that couldn't be right. I pressed my ear to the door again. There it was. Unmistakable, the thin, desperate wail of an infant. What the hell? I fumbled with my deadbolts, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the locks. I threw open the door. The hallway was empty. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, and there, right in front of my doormat, was a car seat. One of those infant carriers with a handle. Inside was a baby, maybe a few weeks old, wrapped in a thin blue blanket that was soaked through with rain. The baby was screaming, face red, tiny fists flailing. Taped to the handle of the car seat was a yellow sticky note. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Vanessa's looping, careless scrawl. It said 3 words. He is yours. That's it. 3 words. No explanation. No name. No nothing. Just he is yours and a screaming infant in a wet blanket in a freezing hallway at 3 in the morning. I looked down the hallway both ways. Empty. I looked at the stairwell. Nobody. Vanessa had dumped her baby and run. I stood there in complete shock, staring at this tiny human who was absolutely losing it, his cries echoing off the concrete walls. I didn't know what to do. I'd never held a baby in my life. I was 21 years old, broke, living alone, working 18-hour days just to survive. I couldn't take care of a baby. This had to be a mistake. This had to be some kind of sick joke. But the baby kept crying. And he was cold. I could see it. His little face was almost purple from the cold and the screaming, so I did the only thing I could do. I picked up the car seat, brought it inside, and closed the door. The apartment was silent except for his cries. I set the car seat down on my futon and just stared. The baby was so small. Fragile. His eyes were squeezed shut and his mouth was wide open, wailing with everything he had. I had no idea what to do. I pulled out my phone and called Vanessa. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I called 5 more times. Every single one went to voicemail. I texted her. Where are you? What is happening? Come back right now. No response. I tried calling my parents. My mom's phone rang and rang. No answer. My dad's phone was turned off. The baby was still crying. I looked at him, this tiny stranger, and felt a wave of panic so intense I thought I might throw up. What was I supposed to do? Call the police? Call Child Protective Services? But he was my nephew. I think. I didn't even know for sure if he was Vanessa's. But that note. That handwriting. It was hers. I carefully unbuckled him from the car seat. He was so light. I held him awkwardly, like he might break. His blanket was soaked and freezing. I didn't have baby clothes. I didn't have diapers. I didn't have formula. I had nothing. I wrapped him in my only clean towel and held him against my chest. Slowly, his cries started to quiet. Just a little. He was warming up. I sat there on my futon at 3:30 in the morning, holding this baby, and my phone buzzed. Finally, a text from my mom, Gloria. We know about the baby, Vanessa told us. You need to take care of him. She can't handle it right now. I stared at that text in disbelief. Take care of him? Just like that? I texted back. Mom, I can't. I don't know how. I don't have anything for a baby. Where is Vanessa? Her response came 2 minutes later. She needs time. This is your responsibility now. We'll talk later. My responsibility? I wasn't even there when he was born. I didn't know his name. I didn't know how old he was. This was insane. I called my mom. She answered on the 5th ring. Her voice was cold, detached. Diana. Vanessa made a mistake. She's not ready to be a mother. You're her sister. You need to step up. Step up? Mom, I'm 21. I live in a studio. I barely make rent. I can't just take a baby. Where is Vanessa? She left. She needed to get away. To figure things out. You have him now. That's just how it is. We'll send you some money for supplies. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. You can't be serious. You're her parents. Why can't you take him? There was a long pause. Then my mother said something I will never forget. Diana, you've always been the responsible one. The one who handles things. Vanessa can't do this. Your father and I are too old to raise another child. This baby is your burden now. Deal with it. And then she hung up. She hung up on me. I sat there in stunned silence, holding this tiny baby who had finally stopped crying and was now just looking up at me with these huge dark eyes. He is yours. Your burden. Deal with it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. But I couldn't. Because I was holding a baby. A baby who was completely innocent in all of this. A baby who didn't ask to be born. Who didn't ask to be abandoned. Who was now looking at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. So I made a decision. If they were going to dump him on me, fine. But I was going to do it right. I was going to raise him. I was going to love him. And I was going to document every single thing they did. Every text, every call, every moment of their neglect. Because something told me that one day, I might need proof of exactly how they abandoned this child. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up researching what babies need. I ordered diapers, formula, clothes, everything on my nearly maxed out credit card. The baby, I decided to name him Ethan, slept in the car seat next to my futon because I didn't have a crib. I checked on him every 10 minutes, terrified he'd stopped breathing. The next morning, my parents wired me $500. That was it. No follow-up call. No questions about the baby. Just $500 like they were paying off a debt. I used it to buy a used crib off Craigslist, and more supplies. Vanessa didn't call, didn't text. She was just gone. For weeks, I heard nothing. Then one day, about a month later, I got a single text from her. "Thanks for taking him. I can't do it. You're better at this stuff anyway." Better at this stuff. Like raising a human being was just another task on a to-do list. I didn't respond. What could I say? Over the next few months, I transformed my entire life around Ethan. I couldn't work the long hours anymore, so I lost clients. My income dropped by half. I applied for every government assistance program I could find. WIC, food stamps, childcare subsidies. I had no shame anymore. I needed help. And I was going to document every single thing they did. Every text, every call, every moment of their neglect. Because something told me that one day, I might need proof of exactly how they abandoned this child. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up researching what babies need. I ordered diapers, formula, clothes, everything on my nearly maxed out credit card. The baby, I decided to name him Ethan, slept in the car seat next to my futon because I didn't have a crib. I recorded phone calls when they did bother to contact me, which was rare. My mom would call once every few months, ask how the baby was doing in this detached, obligatory tone, and then hang up. My dad never called at all. Vanessa would send random texts. Sometimes she'd say she missed Ethan. Sometimes she'd ask for money. I never sent any. Once, when Ethan was about 6 months old, she texted me asking if I could send her photos of him for her Instagram. Not because she wanted to see him, but because she wanted to post them. I blocked her number after that. My parents visited exactly twice in the first 2 years. Both times, they stayed for less than an hour. They'd hold Ethan awkwardly, take a few photos, and leave. They never offered to help. Never asked if I needed anything. They treated it like a charity visit. Like they were doing me a favor by acknowledging his existence. But I kept going. I loved Ethan. He wasn't a burden to me. He was everything. He was the reason I got up every morning. The reason I worked harder than I ever had in my life. I went back to school part-time, taking online classes in computer science. I built my freelance business back up, working late nights after Ethan went to bed. By the time Ethan was 3, I had a stable income. By the time he was 5, I'd landed a full-time remote position as a senior software engineer at a tech company. I was making 6 figures. I bought a small house in a good school district. I gave Ethan everything I could. And through it all, I documented. I saved every report card, every photo, every milestone, every birthday that my family missed, every Christmas they didn't show up for. Ethan asked about his mom once when he was 4. "Where's my mommy?" I told him the truth, in the simplest way I could. "Your mommy couldn't take care of you, so I'm taking care of you. I'm your mommy now." He seemed to accept that. He called me mama. And I was his mama. In every way that mattered. Vanessa never came back. My parents sent a card on Ethan's birthdays, sometimes with $20 inside. That was the extent of their involvement. As far as I was concerned, I was his mother. I'd raised him from 3 weeks old. I was the one who stayed up with him when he was sick. I was the one who taught him to walk, to talk, to read. I was the one who loved him unconditionally. Then, 2 months ago, everything changed. I got a call from a lawyer. A man named Gerald Hoffman. He introduced himself as the executor of Julian Cross's estate. I had no idea who Julian Cross was. Mr. Hoffman explained that Julian Cross was a tech entrepreneur, founder of a major software company, who had died in a helicopter accident 3 weeks earlier. And according to a private paternity test Julian had conducted shortly before his death, he was Ethan's biological father. I was stunned. I didn't even know who Ethan's father was. Vanessa had never told me. She'd never put a name on the birth certificate. I'd assumed it was some random guy she'd hooked up with and never saw again. But apparently, it was Julian Cross. A billionaire. Mr. Hoffman continued. Julian's will included a provision for Ethan. A trust fund worth $600 million to be managed by his legal guardian until Ethan turned 25. That legal guardian was me. I was Ethan's legal guardian. I'd filed for guardianship when he was 2 years old, and my family hadn't contested it. They'd signed off on it without a second thought because they didn't want the responsibility. But now, with $600 million in play, suddenly they cared. Mr. Hoffman warned me. He said, "Miss Marshall, I need to tell you something. News of this inheritance will likely become public soon." Julian Cross was a prominent figure. "If your family finds out about this money, they may try to challenge your guardianship. You need to be prepared." I thanked him and hung up. My hands were shaking. $600 million. For Ethan. It was surreal. Life-changing. Terrifying. And I knew with absolute certainty that my family would come crawling out of the woodwork the second they found out. I was right. 2 weeks later, my mother called. It was the first time she'd called in over a year. Her voice was sweet, dripping with fake warmth. "Diana, sweetheart, how are you? How's our little Ethan?" Our little Ethan. He'd been my little Ethan for 9 years. Now suddenly he was ours. I kept my voice neutral. "He's fine, Mom. What do you need?" "Oh, nothing. Well, I've been thinking. Your father and I, we feel terrible that we haven't been more involved in Ethan's life. We'd love to come visit. Spend some real time with him. Maybe he could even stay with us for a while. Get to know his grandparents." I felt my jaw clench. After 9 years of nothing, now she wanted to be involved. It was so transparent it was almost funny. "I know about the money, Mom." There was a pause. Then she laughed, this forced, nervous laugh. "Money? What money, honey?" "Julian Cross's estate. The trust fund. I know you know." There was silence on the other end. Then her tone changed. It went from sweet to cold in an instant. "That money belongs to Ethan. And Ethan is family. We have a right to be part of his life. You had a right to be part of his life for the last 9 years. You chose not to be." She didn't respond. I continued. "If you want to visit Ethan, you're welcome to. But you're not taking him anywhere. And you're not getting access to that money." She hung up. I knew it wasn't over. 3 days later, I was served with legal papers. My sister Vanessa, along with her new husband Marcus Dalton, and my parents Richard and Gloria Marshall, were filing a petition for custody of Ethan. They claimed that I was an unfit guardian, that I'd isolated Ethan from his biological family, that Vanessa, as his biological mother, had rights. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. I called Mr. Hoffman immediately. He connected me with the best family law attorney in the state, a woman named Catherine Price. My sister Vanessa, along with her new husband Marcus Dalton, and my parents Richard and Gloria Marshall, were filing a petition for custody of Ethan. They claimed that I was an unfit guardian, that I'd isolated Ethan from his biological family, that Vanessa, as his biological mother, had rights. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. I called Mr. Hoffman immediately. He connected me with the best family law attorney in the state, a woman named Catherine Price. Then she looked at me and smiled. "This," she said, "is the most well-documented case I've ever seen. They don't stand a chance." But I wasn't taking any chances. I kept digging. I hired a private investigator to look into Vanessa and Marcus. What I found was stunning. Vanessa had been married twice before Marcus. Both marriages ended in divorce within 2 years. She'd had 2 other children, both given up for adoption. She'd had multiple arrests for petty theft and drug possession. She presented financial records showing that my parents had contributed less than $1,500 per year to Ethan's care. She presented Vanessa's criminal record, her history of abandoned children, her financial instability. She presented my records. Every doctor's visit, every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game, every school play, every birthday party I'd thrown for Ethan. They were living in a rented condo, barely scraping by on Social Security. They'd never been there for Ethan, but now they wanted a piece of the pie. The court date arrived. I walked into that courtroom with Catherine by my side. Across the room sat Vanessa, Marcus, and my parents with their lawyer, a guy named Todd Brenner, who looked like he'd passed the bar exam last week. The judge was a woman named Judith Chen. She'd been on the bench for 20 years and had a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. Mr. Brenner stood up and made his opening statement. He painted Vanessa as a loving mother who'd made a difficult decision to let her sister raise her son temporarily while she got her life together. He claimed that now Vanessa was stable, married, and ready to be a mother. He painted me as controlling, as someone who had deliberately kept Ethan away from his biological family. He even suggested that I'd only taken Ethan in because I knew about the potential inheritance. It was all lies. Every word. Then Catherine stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She methodically dismantled every single one of their claims. She presented the sticky note. The one Vanessa had left on the car seat. "He is yours." 3 words in Vanessa's handwriting. She presented text messages from my mother. Your burden now. Deal with it. She presented financial records showing that my parents had contributed less than $1,500 per year to Ethan's care. She presented Vanessa's criminal record, her history of abandoned children, her financial instability. She presented my records. Every doctor's visit, every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game, every school play, every birthday party I'd thrown for Ethan. Catherine was in her 50s, sharp as a knife, with a reputation for destroying opposing counsel in court. We met in her office downtown. I brought everything. 10 years' worth of documentation, text messages, voicemails, financial records showing I'd received a total of $12,000 from my parents over 9 years. Medical records showing I'd taken Ethan to every single appointment. School records, photos, everything. Catherine looked through it all. I looked him dead in the eye and said, I didn't keep him away. They stayed away. For 9 years, they chose not to be in his life. I have the phone records to prove it. He asked if I was planning to use Ethan's inheritance for myself. I said, the trust is managed by a third-party fiduciary. I have no access to the principal. It's for Ethan's future, not mine. Everything I've spent on him has come from my own income. I have receipts for every single expense. Mr. Brenner looked frustrated. He tried one more angle. Isn't it true, Miss Marshall, that you're bitter toward your family? That you've held a grudge against them for years? I paused. Then I said, I'm not bitter. I'm grateful. I'm grateful they abandoned Ethan because it meant I got to raise him. It meant he got to have a stable, loving home instead of being dragged through their chaos. If that's bitterness, then yes, I'm bitter. The courtroom was silent. Mr. Brenner sat down. Then Catherine called her surprise witness. Ethan. He was 10 years old enough to testify if the judge allowed it. Judge Chen looked at Ethan, then at me, then at Vanessa. She allowed it. Ethan took the stand. Catherine asked him simple questions. Who takes care of you, Ethan? My mama. That's what he called me. Mama. Who makes your meals? Mama. Who helps you with homework? Mama. Who do you love most in the world? Mama. Then Catherine asked, do you know who that woman is? She pointed at Vanessa. Ethan looked at her. He shook his head. No. Do you know who those people are? She pointed at my parents. He shook his head again. No. Catherine sat down. Mr. Brenner didn't even attempt to cross-examine a 10-year-old who just said he didn't know his biological mother. Judge Chen called a recess. We waited in the hallway. Catherine told me it was going well, but I was terrified. What if the judge decided that biology mattered more than love? What if she gave them custody? Then Catherine pulled me aside. She handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a document. It was an addendum to Julian Cross's will. Something Mr. Hoffman had sent over that morning. I read it. My hand started shaking. Catherine smiled. This is what we call a poison pill. When we went back into the courtroom, Judge Chen asked if there was any further evidence. Catherine stood up. Yes, Your Honor. She handed the sealed envelope to the bailiff, who gave it to the judge. Judge Chen opened it. She pulled out the document. It wasn't a letter. It was a legal addendum. She started reading. Her eyes widened. She looked up at Vanessa, Marcus, and my parents. Her expression shifted from neutral to absolute shock. Then she looked at me. Miss Marshall, she asked, her voice quiet, do they know what this is? No, Your Honor, I said. They don't. Judge Chen shook her head slowly. She looked back at the other side. You people, she said, are truly unbelievable. She held up the document. This is a legally binding addendum to Julian Cross's last will and testament. Authenticated, notarized, and filed with his estate. She began to read aloud. First, I, Julian Cross, confirm that Ethan Marshall is my biological son. I saw Marcus grin. He thought he'd won. The judge continued. Second, I bequeath my entire estate, valued at approximately $600 million, to be placed into an irrevocable trust for Ethan Marshall, to be managed solely by his legal mother, Diana Marshall, until his 25th birthday. Marcus's Grin got weiter. He didn't care. He thought he could get me removed and get access to the money. The judge's voice dropped. However, and she emphasized that word, in the event that any member of Ethan's biological mother's family, specifically named as Vanessa Dalton, Marcus Dalton, Richard Marshall, or Gloria Marshall, attempts to contest Diana Marshall's custody, or attempts to interfere with her management of the trust, or files any legal action to that effect, then 99.9% of the entire $600 million estate is to be immediately and irrevocably liquidated and donated to a children's charity, leaving Ethan with a remaining trust of only $600,000. The silence in that courtroom was deafening. Marcus' smile vanished. His face went white. Vanessa made a sound I'd never heard before, a high-pitched wail, and she slid off the bench in a dead faint. My mother gasped. My father just stared at me. They'd done it. Their greed, their lawsuit, had just cost Ethan $599,400,000. The trap had sprung, and they'd walked right into it. Judge Chen was furious. "Order," she shouted, banging her gavel. "Your petition is dismissed with prejudice. I'm finding you all in contempt of court." This was a frivolous, malicious, greedy abuse of the system. She looked at me. Her face softened. "Miss Marshall, you're free to go with your son. Court is adjourned." I stood up, shaking. Catherine hugged me. We'd won. But it was more than that. The addendum, the poison pill Julian Cross had put in place, had just saved Ethan from ever being used by my family again. As I walked out of the courtroom, Ethan ran to me from where he'd been sitting with a court advocate. "Mama," he said, "are we going home?" "Yeah, baby," I said, picking him up even though he was getting too big for that. "We're going home." Behind me, I heard Marcus screaming at Vanessa. I heard my mother sobbing. I heard my father trying to argue with the judge. I didn't look back. I just walked out with my son, the child I'd raised, the child I loved more than anything in the world. 2 days later, I got a single text from Vanessa. "I hate you." I deleted it. I didn't need to keep that one. The case was over. They couldn't touch us anymore. The trust was safe. $600,000 was still life-changing for Ethan. It would pay for college, for a house, for his future. And more importantly, he was safe from them. My parents never contacted me again. Vanessa and Marcus divorced 6 months later. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Marcus had tried to sue Vanessa for fraud, claiming she'd misled him about the inheritance. It went nowhere. As for me and Ethan, we're doing great. He's 11 now. He plays soccer, he's on the robotics team at school, and he's the happiest kid I know. He still calls me mama. And I'm still his mama. That will never change. The most powerful lesson I learned from all of this is that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. It's about who stays. My biological family abandoned Ethan the moment he became inconvenient. But I chose him. Every single day for 10 years, I chose him. And when they came back, thinking they could waltz in and claim him because of money, they learned a hard truth. You can't buy love. You can't buy 10 years of sacrifice. You can't buy the bond between a mother and her son. Julian Cross knew that. That's why he put that clause in his will. He knew that if Ethan's biological family ever came sniffing around for money, it meant they didn't deserve it. And he was right. I looked him dead in the eye and said, I didn't keep him away. They stayed away. For 9 years, they chose not to be in his life. I have the phone records to prove it. He asked if I was planning to use Ethan's inheritance for myself. I said, the trust is managed by a third-party fiduciary. I have no access to the principal. It's for Ethan's future, not mine. Everything I've spent on him has come from my own income. I have receipts for every single expense. I won something far more valuable. I won the right to keep being Ethan's mother. And that, more than any amount of money, is worth everything. Have you ever been the responsible one in your family? The one who had to step up when everyone else walked away? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Thank you for listening.